So what do you think of my new t-shirt? I saw it, the colouring is actually light blue, but it looks really dark blue in this, but it's in light blue. And I saw it and I was like, I have to get it. I almost got a penguin one, but I just felt it wasn't very comfortable. It wasn't like soft inside, and this one is. So not super soft, but soft enough. Softer is the question. But yeah, I seem to make a habit of this. Each year I seem to be like, I find a nicer Christmas t-shirt jumper than I found the year before. And I think I've got to get it because it's nicer than the other one I got. And now I've got about 15 of them because I seem to be getting them maybe 2 a year or something. But anyway, I won't get another one next year, but I probably will. But yeah, this is definitely my new favourite Christmas jumper. And I might actually get rid of the green ones because it's so nice. Why wear this when I could? Why wear the green one when I could wear this? Anyway, so I just found. I just want to talk about make a video about this guy that I've just met called Darius J Wright. I don't know. There's something wrong with him. Definitely, like he looks like someone who's been on drugs. I don't know if he's been paid to just say lots of shit, or if he generally believes it. But his eyes look half closed, and he looks kind of like a zombie. That's my first opinion of him. But I think he's kind of an interesting one because when people find out that I'm God and Christ and a different species, and I've been trapped for like 11 years because I have tons of information and proof that I am a god. But I can't seem to get anyone to take me seriously or write to me or contact me. I don't know what's wrong with people. I feel like they're all robots and they're just kind of programmed to ignore me until a specific time, which I have no clue even if that date even exists because it's been 11 years and it's almost 12 now, so it's just continuing. And I'm just getting more and more frustrated. But yeah, I think just give up on the world and just give up on the idea of having a life because that clearly isn't going to happen. This world doesn't want me to have a life. This world wants me to be pissed off, but it's fine because I'll be very happy when I get to murder you all. So I don't really care. But yes, anyway, we'll go to this guy who is just spewing out shit. But yeah, let's just analyze him.
Past of who we were, then you would return. A lot of people would return back to religion because they would realize there is a form of a, let's just say quotations, creator. But they want to rewrite the past and suppress the past because once you realize the history of the past, then you start to walk back into the truth of the divinity of your soul. You stop living in a sense of just the physical aspects, but you start living from a soul, your consciousness, and you operate from that space.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about in this. In the past, people were stupid, people were cavemen, people were unevolved, people believed all sorts of things. You know, they generally believed in some weird superstitions and they had some crazy, crazy beliefs. And so the idea that going back to the past will open your consciousness and make you more aware of different races that have existed since the beginning of time, which is basically what he goes on to say and what he is saying. But yeah, this is, I don't know what is wrong with him. His eyes are half closed. That's the first thing that I noticed. Like he's like this, like he's, you know, like I don't know what's wrong with him. He looks like a robot to me. But there are going to be a lot of people that think like him, that believe things that he believes. They're not going to be on my side. They're going to see me as the enemy who's lying to them, and they're going to see people like this as being the ones that are actually trying to awaken people and give them knowledge of the truth. But yeah, what he's saying just doesn't make sense because people weren't smarter in the past. If you want to seek your knowledge from the past, that would be basically like seeking your knowledge from a 1-year-old child rather than from someone who's, you know, more educated and has learnt more things through life experience, or the awakening of their soul. But it's you can't do it so much in the past because these other beliefs weren't really there in the past.
Because then you start to realize the multidimensionality of who we actually are, and you could begin to access that as well. Because waking up to that past is also realizing that they were doing the same things in that past to access the other side, the divinity within the physical body here. And this is why all these things are suppressed.
So the multi-dimension doesn't exist. There is one timeline. There is a multi-dimension. There's God, me, who lives outside of the timeline, who can time travel and live in this multi-dimensional world. But everyone that's living in the timeline is stuck in the timeline, and there is no multi-universe for the things that are inside the timeline to start jumping into other timelines. This is not the truth. Anyone that's promoting this as truth is just confused and is just spewing out things that they want to believe. They may be seeing things from God's perspective, but they are not realizing that they are not God. They are not living outside the multi-dimension. They are living inside the timeline, and you need to stay focused on intelligent things rather than on fantasies and dreams and desires, or what you think you can do or what you think you can already achieve. Because if you do that, you're going to start driving yourself mad, and you're going to commit suicide, because you're going to think, why am I living on this planet? This planet is shit. This planet, there's a ton of horrible, ugly places on Earth. There's a ton of horrible, bad people. Why would you want to live here when you are a multi-dimensional being who just can reach access to these different worlds just by killing yourself? This is what people are going to start thinking. This belief is going to lead people into suicide. Now, I don't care, because I really don't care if people commit suicide over this. If you want to believe this shit, good, go ahead. But yeah, if you start believing that you are a multi-dimensional being and you just need to open yourself up to the beliefs that they had thousands of years ago, you're going to find yourself going mad, because you have no evidence or proof of what it is that they believe. All you have is a couple of tablets that say all sorts of fairy tales and shit, and probably aren't even translated properly. And anyway.
So, Darius, let me ask you, with everything you've seen on the other side or in the astral realms, when you're in doing your out-of-body experiences, what knowledge do you have about what's happening to us right now and where we're all going? Because it seems a bit nutty right now. At least that's what the media tells us, that we're getting a little nutty. But you can just sense that there is something happening. There is a lot of change happening, and it's happening very fast. I'd love to know if you had any insights, or have you seen anything or been told anything about where we are in its journey and what we have coming up.
There are
hidden in appalling conditions. More than 70 donkeys were found suffering a life of misery and pain.
There are inevitable events that will happen regardless. One of them is a soul is going to wake up regardless to the other side and who they are. Now, that could be through a controlled out-of-body state. It could be through any other means, or even through death. The soul is going to wake up. That is something that is fixed, and it is 100% going to happen.
So if you start preaching things like this, that to open your mind and your consciousness and to get into your better place, all you need to do is take drugs, stimulate your senses or whatever, and practice meditation. And when that fails, you're going to result in wanting to die, and that's basically the path of it. When you keep wanting something to be real and you keep looking for evidence of it, and then you can't actually get it, and then you just it's like taking drugs. First you take the mild stuff, and then you start wanting to take the harder stuff just to see if that kicks in. And if you start wanting to, spiritually astral project, you can't do this. But if you start listening to people that say that you can, you're going to keep forcing yourself to believe that you can. And eventually, when you realize you can't, you're going to start seeking more than this. And then you're going to say, I just want to do a bit too many drugs and just die. It's a suicide. This is a suicide belief. This is.
Regardless. So there's certain events even here that will play out and happen. One of these is the awakening again to who we are. That's something that's unfolding.
Who you are. What the fuck are you talking about? You just need to awaken to what you like, things you like, and just trying to use up time. That's what I feel life is about. Life isn't about actually working out who you are. It's about working out what you like. And trying to have some sort of fulfilling, meaningful life that you can just fulfill time. That's all I'm doing. It's you don't need to seek who you are. You need to seek who you are. Just be you. And I don't know, this idea of forcing people to start seeking for themselves, but by also kind of preaching that actually you're some sort of superhuman being that has supernatural powers. He actually said that in the ancient times, I don't know which point it is, this is an hour-long interview, but he said at some point in this that he believes that there's portals in the pyramids where you can get from Australia to America instantaneously, and they have all this secret power and knowledge, and if you just tap into the ancient past, you'll be able to get this, If you start preaching to this belief to people, all you're going to do is lead them to disappointment when they realise that transportation like this has not been figured out in the past. I don't believe it exists. Will it exist in the future? Well, I don't know. It feels like we're getting more and more AI, computer, robotic stuff, and I don't know what will happen in the future. I really don't. But I don't believe that this existed in the past. No, because people were idiots back then.
And what you're seeing in that path of getting there is the destruction of all the illusions or the control systems that have been put in place to enslave humanity. And that has to be exposed, because the closer you get to the source of truth and the light, the bigger the shadow becomes. And so the closer you get to it, you're going to see all of these chaotic things playing out.
I'm not really sure what you're saying there, but you're saying the closer you get to truth, the more you can expose the slavery that humans are going through. You can't do that. I mean, slavery technically is just where people are working for free. Okay, I've not earned a penny in over a year and a half now, so anything that I'm doing that might be considered work, which I feel like it is work, because I'm constantly trying to talk and reach out to people and email and text and make videos and analyze stuff, and make the singers and talk to them through time, every single thing that I've done, I've not made a penny from it. So I am a slave, and I can't seem to get rid of this slavery. And having knowledge of what I'm going through, or having knowledge of truth, does not mean that you're going to break the system of slavery. You can't. Slavery is where you do things for other people and don't get paid for it. So technically every single mother in the world that breastfeeds or looks after a baby, or every father as well, if you're working hours to look after a child that probably doesn't appreciate anything that you're going through because it's too young, and I don't know, burping and stuff like that is all it's thinking about, really. You're basically turning yourself into a slave, and you can't get rid of this, because you have to start seeing slavery as not being such a bad thing. There's different types of slavery. There's a good type of slavery and there's a bad type of slavery. It's bad to be forced to work, but I feel like society has definitely created a nation full of slaves by having houses so expensive. You want to buy a nice big house, you have to get out a massive mortgage, but for you to pay off the mortgage, you then have to turn yourself into a slave where over 50% or 80-90% of your income goes on paying off the mortgage. So you basically turn people into slaves, because once they've paid off the mortgage, once they've paid tax, once they've paid road tax, once they've bought their car for travel and any other necessary needs such as basic food and the odd holiday or something, you've basically turned yourself into a slave, because there's nothing left. And it's a slave culture, and I feel like as people wake up, you can get out of a slave culture. You stop being a slave when you know you could have a good life and you don't have to work, but you have to sort of redefine what you mean by work. Is doing something you love, is that really counted as work? If you're a singer and you perform on stage and stuff, okay, maybe you feel like a slave because everything you're doing is actually just paying off a massive loan that you've taken out for the companies to help for you to record and do lots of things like make music videos and stuff, and maybe you might feel like a slave for a couple of years just because you're literally just paying off all the money that you spent on promotion and stuff, but at the same time, if you love singing and performing and traveling and being noticed and appreciated and having a name, it might not feel like slavery because you enjoy the work that you're doing. So I feel like you can get rid of slavery, but I feel like you first need to work out what it actually is, what you actually enjoy doing, and therefore but yeah, there's always going to be people wanting cheaper clothes, cheaper food, and there's always going to be people out of work that are willing to work for less and less, and therefore slavery cannot really be abolished. I think you have to just enjoy what you have, the opportunities that you have, and start seeing slavery in a different way, because if you have a company where some people are all on minimum wage, are they the slaves because they're all on minimum wage and they're only just able to afford their mortgage? Or is the business owner the slave because he's the one who's paying all these mortgages, taking this big risk on this company, putting all his time and effort? He can't just, it's not a 9 to 5 if you own a business. If you own a business, you own it from 24 hours, so 7 days a week. You own it all the time. If the business gets set on fire, you have to deal with it, and you might end up having to pay the consequences if it's not insured or something like this, and therefore, have you actually earned anything in that year if it's all destroyed, if something's happened, and if your business fails, and therefore you might spend many years trying to pay off this business that you worked for, and then you end up not. So slavery is a very deep subject, and to think that you can just to start saying things where you just like, to get rid of abolish this slave nation, we just need to reach out into truth and just open our minds and meditate or something. That's not teaching anyone anything. That's just making me think, well, what the fuck are you talking about? You need to know what slavery is, and how to not think of it as being slavery, or how to enjoy your life in between the hours that you are working.
We're in the process of, and I hate to say it, that sounds tacky, the Great Awakening, but it's more of the great revealing and remembering of who we always were and what this place always was, and the creation of it, and all of these things.
Who we always was? That doesn't make any sense. It's the Great Awakening of who we were and who we always was. He goes on to basically say that humans have supernatural powers, and they don't. If you're trying to have a great awakening of who we were or who we was, you're actually talking about your life as an animal. Your life as an animal when you were cats, dogs, or fish even, just your past. This is who you was. You were just an animal, and you are evolving. So it's not about going back into the past. If people live in the past and always want to try and regain the knowledge of their past, what they're actually saying is that their soul or their spirit was happier when they were just an animal and just living free and wild and not having to pay rent and be a human.
Things will come to fruition. This is going back to even the contact of races that have always been here but have been suppressed, and you're getting this leaked information through whistleblowers, through the government agencies, saying that certain extraterrestrial races are here. They're not necessarily extraterrestrial. They've always been here. The different races, the races that look like humans, not humans. Yeah, so
this guy believes in the greys and the aliens. I noticed that song, Inca, I can't remember her name. It's just a new sex. I really like that Jericho song. Hi, I'm from outer space. I got Milky Way in my blood, or whatever. It's a really, really good song. I really like it. But that's the only song that I've ever noticed. Well, I've only ever heard one song talk about the greys, and I've looked at the lyrics in her song, and there is actually one line that says something about the greys, and it's interesting because just as I listen to that song, I come across a guy who also talks about the greys, and that's not a coincidence. That things happen like this for a reason, and I feel like this is a perfect example of the new type of human. But there's two new types of human. There's a new type of human, e.g. animals that have now been turned into humans and think that they are far more advanced and more intelligent than they were. But they are, because they are more intelligent, but they might start believing that they're even more advanced and that there's other races on Earth. I mean, if he thinks there's other races on Earth, it's because he's remembering his life as an animal, and when you're an animal, well, a rabbit can meet a tortoise and be like, what the fuck are you? You're a different race, aren't you? And then when that rabbit becomes a dog, again, that dog might end up meeting things like rhinos or strange. That was a funny dog. A dog was just sleeping, and this big giant rhino just kind of came up and crept up against it, and it stared at it and jumped out of its resting place and ran off. But yeah, I mean, if you have an experience like that as a dog, being, I don't know, creeped up on by a rhino, you know, if that dog goes on to die and then later become a human, that human will probably grow up with these beliefs that there are other races and other species and inhuman things, because their soul is remembering the time when they were an animal, they were an animal, and they saw something of a sort of equal intelligence to them, but of completely different species. Dogs and rhinos are very different, and so there will be a lot of these people who believe things like this. But I feel like partly the reason why they believe things like this is because they're remembering their life as a human, or no, as a dog or something, when they came across interesting species that were very similar to them, and now they still think that these species are very are similar to them, and are still and are sort of on the same level, intelligence level as humans, but they're not. I didn't make grey aliens. They're not aliens. Grey aliens are not here. I've never seen them, never spoken to them, and this guy's just chatting shit.
The revealing of everything is where we are going. The steps to get there, I don't necessarily know how that unfolds, but I know that is the fixed event marker, the destination of where everything is revealed again. Yeah. So
that, which makes sense.
Everything needs to be revealed, e.g. this is all nonsense and shit. There are different levels of people, because the more lives you have, although I wanted to do a page actually that looks at this. I was thinking about it, when was I think it was when I was in Leon actually. I was thinking about like how to count the different ages. You know, I often say, you know, that one I feel like they've had 8 lives, and this one I feel like has 12. But when it came to Elon Musk, I felt like it was 12. But then I also felt like I wanted to say plus. And then it kind of made me think, well, how are these numbers being like registered, you know? Because technically a life could be 70 years. So if you have 2 lives and you only live till 30 in both of them, or 30, 35, you know, it might actually be counted as, you know, that could actually be counted as one life. In which case, when I say 12 lives, you know, it could actually be like 60 lives, but maybe you died as a 2-year-old in like 5 or 6 of them. You know, people in the past, a lot of people in the past used to die when they were children because their parents didn't know how to look after them. Hygiene was bad, germs, not cleaning bottles, and I think they did breastfeed, but a lot of women probably couldn't breastfeed, and therefore a lot of children probably died in infancy. So, you know, it's always bothered me that, you know, this numbering of how many lives people have had. You know, I feel like I'm hearing numbers, and I want to stay, you know, I want to stay strong on this. You know, I think if you're under 15, then it counts as a half-life, and if it's over, it counts as a life. You know, I kind of want to stay strong on that. But at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is this actually the truth, or are these lives actually counted in a different system? You know, so if you have 15, if you die at 15, technically that's not even counted as a quarter life. You know, 25 counts as a quarter. If 70 is a life, then 35 is a half life, and then what's half of that? 15, 18 counts as a quarter life, and therefore 15 counts as less than a quarter life. But I don't know like how the actual counting system is done, but I wouldn't be. I think it depends on the timeline and how many people have been, how big the population is. But I do feel like a huge portion of the population have had 10 lives. Like, it's not rare. The singers have had 10 lives, but I feel like that's not uncommon. I feel like a lot of the people that the singers work with have also had probably more like 9. But yeah, 9 or 10. If you're a creative person with personality, I feel like 9 or 10 is a very normal number for you. Comedians definitely are probably people with sense of humour and can tell jokes and have a you know, can interact well with people. Autistic people are probably people that have far less lives because their autism makes them less social, and well, animals are born less social. So if the autistic character actually comes from your time as an animal, and as you grow and have more lives, you become your soul becomes less autistic, and I believe that autism is actually a character character, but it might not be that, because sometimes I feel like some people might be autistic because maybe they've gone through some sort of violence in one of their past lives, and this has made them slightly fearful of people. So I feel like there's different reasons why someone might be autistic. I mean, I've heard that Elon is autistic, and I if that's the truth, I feel like it might be because there was a bad life somewhere in that. I'm not saying more. I don't know, and I don't know anything, but you know, it's sometimes autism is just a social disorder, and it comes from many different aspects of people, so it's not always that. But with my sister's case, I'm saying, with my sister's case, I feel like her autism comes from just not having that many lives, but other people might have autism because of either being a perfectionist and just wanting to get things right, like that friend who looks like The Weeknd, and or it might be because of maybe a distrust. I mean, Julius Caesar was killed by his mates, wasn't he? So I feel like something like that might actually cause a slight amount of autism in you, because you know, if you have a life where you're killed by your best friend, you're in your next life, even though you won't remember being killed by your friends, you might feel slightly distrusting towards them, because you know, the same thing might happen even though you don't remember it. So I feel like autism can come from like different ways, but this is all going to be exposed. But yeah, this is not different races. I mean, technically you're all different races when you were animals, so you were once like a rhino, and people with people who were a rhino are probably would probably have quite a strong temper. I can imagine them being like people that are very stern in their ways. No, this is how we do it, and I'm going to put my foot down. And I can imagine that being... All the animals have lots of different characters, and I feel like part of a soul's character is dependent on the sort of combination of animal lives that you've had, and this helps form your soul. And yeah, and your soul is basically just data, subconscious memory, and if you can calm and channel this subconscious memory, you might be able to bring back these sort of traits, but it's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, I think it'd be better to focus on the future rather than on the past. If you focus on the future, you can try and think where your soul is going to go. And if you are one of the souls that are lucky enough to make it out the timeline and make it into your own world or whatever, then that would be the place that you would want to get to. But if you focus on the past, you might just start bringing back traits or habits or beliefs that you had in your past, which probably were wrong. So I wouldn't do what these guys doing.
Sense, because we are. I mean, you and I having this conversation, and hundreds of thousands of people watching it sends a pretty big sign that there is a change. Where before something like this would maybe be seen by 5 or 10 people, or you and I would be talking in a hotel, a hall somewhere with 10 people.
Well, there is a change. It's called the internet, and of course with the internet comes much better communication and stuff. The problem is if people are just spreading lies and false beliefs, it's not actually going to be helping people. You know, people. I was reminded about all this new system to try and stop teenagers from getting on Instagram or on social media. You know, Australia is trying to ban it. You know, partly I feel like they're only doing that because they're kind of jealous over the fact that these kids have something that they never had. You know, the internet can be a blessing because you can learn so much, you can do so much, you can feel like, wow, well, that's interesting, or I didn't know that, or wow, look at that hotel in the middle of Thailand, I want to go there, and you can see all these amazing spas, and I love to do that, just sit by a spa and just imagine all these pictures that I've seen on the internet and just like soak in and imagine that I'm in these places. You know, I love to do that, and so if you're a child, you can access that, and social media is amazing, but if you're not very good at working out like lies from truth, you know, you might end up just believing lots of fake news. You might end up finding stalkers or lying about your age to get onto chat rooms to meet guys and then meet the wrong kind of guys. You know, it is a very big danger. So when it comes to the ban of children on social media, I can see both sides of the story, so I don't want to be on one side or the other. I do feel like it can be a really good thing, but it can also be a very bad thing, and it can almost hypnotize them or brainwash them into believing lies if that is what they choose to seek after. Hence, it might be kind of damaging for young people, because young people are more influenced by what they watch, and if they're watching people like this, they're going to start believing that they too are some sort of superhuman, from maybe there is other races here and they can just tap into being like them and become like them or something. It can be like my fish that was a platy, e.g. had just a normal tail, and then it's now sort of got a spike at the bottom, so it's seen the sword tail, which is like a platy but has a big spike on it, and it started growing a spike, so it started to change its species. And I feel like that there might be some people that would want to know about all these different species that exist on Earth, and they might start believing that this is real, and they might start thinking that they too are being like this or whatever. I don't know. They can believe all sorts of nonsense, so it might be a good idea to have. I'm undecided. I'm happy with either way. I think it should be the parents' responsibility to try and limit social media, but if the governments want to shut it down for under 15s, then it's up to them. I've got to stop this. This is a very long video.